All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to start with Kumbaya. Sorry. Or something else, just a second. Probably going to punish for that. Anyway. All right, I better come forward and confess myself. Just a second. From the heart of the savior of the 100 deities of the Shida, on the peak of the cloud resembling a clump of extremely white, fresh curd, King of Dhamma, Nisin Losam Drakma, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, in a line throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit from a mind of faith, please come for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanation is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory and renown. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, lights, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated, I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I've collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful. By abandoning the 8 worldly concerns, Savior will sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of Dharmakaya, please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigrated beings, and in particular may it cause of the perfect pure Losam Drakma's teaching to shine forever. Sashi Poki Jun Shimeto Tamri Ram Lingshi Nidegem Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Hidroku Namta Shin La Chupashu. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losam Drakma, who had a morality of eminently pure way of life, was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the 2 stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure father and sons, and combining into one, enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and their imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure, as clear as crystal. So we're going to recite the 5-line Miximine, page 13. Migmetse weta chenrezi, jime kembe wangpo jape yang, dupo malu zonsu sanweda, kanche gebe tsungye tsungwa pa, losam drape shabla sowa de, migmetse weta chenrezi, jime kembe dupo malu zonsu na, kanche gebe tsungye pa, losam drape shabla sowa de, migmetse weta chenrezi, jime kembe dupo malu zonsu na, losam drape shabla sowa de. The end.
Sangye Jodon Soji Chonong La Changje Bardu Dang Kyabsun Chi Dagi Chushi Gibin Sonong Jolam Benji Sangjin Jubara Sho Sanji Chedan Tsojin Chonam La Chanche Bardu Dam Kyabsun Che Dagi Chishi Yibin Tsonum Rolam Benje Sanjin Drupara Sho Sanji Chedan Tsojin Chonam La Chanche Bardu Dam Kyabsun Che Dagi Chishi Yibin Tsonum Rolam Benje Sanjin Drupara Sho 강기 투즈니 존네 따와 담제 밤비 체르 담비 춘 된제 과덤 제라 찬제로 Good morning everyone. 대리 가와 상보 러저레샤 승아도 보스 사만로 만체 엔델 페드샤스라 저조 보스 사만로 페드샤스
So we are quite fortunate today. All the bosses of the center are here today with us. The big bosses.
지지나 간서 간저 시기에 따가 용이나 지지나 아니 오늘 람름 녀가 다디 레와도들야 람름 녀가 용이 레와 yes.
Maybe they're here to check out whether we are actually covering all the essential points in Lamrim, kind of being able to see whether we're doing it all right, you know, so it's a little bit dangerous. We're treading dangerous water here.
아니 대야분도스라 배야분도스 개런스 뒤즈여디도스 레바나 안다 저조디 진경치고라스라 저조디 오늘 단내기 아니 라마 이시리 라마 소버무치 이기다 우티비기 아니 치 게두 gembatsoगता 로망 릴야 아니 콜레슈께요라스 라 피 콜레경 조선 땅ing 조선 땅시니 아니 다지 배시 롱업추 삼성 그러냐 아니 최저된 경경 체니 다 단디 잘이야 당하런서다 아니 최저된는 되니 비기다 추체니나다 아니 지 샴페인기 차와 가려버디 티체고wen다 아니 까법기 겐도디 안간줄이 여wen자 안간줄 까고블이야 루루체 아니 트레더체 안 찍찍래야 아니 굳이다 쇠섬체니 안 추조디 내가 채와나 야차 야당바 말씀은 미리 아니 제투 그래서라 대만도 양 까고래야 데스직 통메 데스 쇼왕기 아니 찍찍래야 가스가 아직 아니 찍 나볼라야 남주두자때야 오 딘디 소리 세대바나 수수 겔레야 팽마리 저조델레야 팽마리 롬반디나노이나야 펜도시 투마리스 안지 안 라만남비 투곤데는 주투마르와스 안 딘자 하장기 이폼 여기 니스 견조에 차로원자 베사수 치고도스로
So we care for the center. We work for the sake of making sure that we continue our work. First of all, having been guided by Lama Geshe and also Kyabje Lama Sopa. Many students have worked hard throughout the years, not only contributing with work, but also with money and in other ways. And we've been here for almost 50 years. You know, so being able to continue with the work of the center, to uphold all the activities of the center is attributed to the hard work and also expenses that many people have put together throughout the years. So we're here so that we continue with that so that not only we'll be able to continue providing a spiritual program, but also so that we'll be able to be of benefit to others. So we have so looking at our current situation, now we shoulder the responsibility of making sure that we continue with those activities. So we come together in order to make that happen. It's important that we continue to support each other in a careful, in a caring and respectful way. And we do our best in order to do that. If sometimes it happens that we become a bit abrasive with each other, we speak in a way that is either too direct or disrespectful to others, we ought to make sure that it does not happen, because first of all, it's not helpful to ourselves. It's not helpful to those around us in the center or in the surrounding. It's not helpful, to the people that live in this area, in this country, and so forth. And it doesn't accord with the intention of our lamas. So as much as we can, we want to make sure that we abstain from that.
number sanji bi chu di nang gi table chim bi chu gi bi ne den zu ro di champagne che adren dos ro champagne da chi simjan tamje si la go re da simjan tamje la ya phe ma do na ya anzu lomban di nang gi me la ya chi pen to tu ya gi to la yan bezun che go ya di anzu da chi sanji jesun ju gi bi 이게 거든 지 차고 그랬어. 된다 심자 탐질이야 편 도야라야. 지금 안주 소수 찍고 증거네. 깔가고 베라도 된자 루루치는 안 참이기 네바 비기 루루치네. 아니 편도 제투야기 탑시지. 데덴데 요랬어. 아니 안주 까고라야 삼수 많던 비기. 삼수 많도 견센데 체네. 찍지라야 아니 당 샘께야지 용거라 디 소스께올라 지단 고께 도모면 컴데반자 카요 말스 이내야 디 아니 미니 좀나 삼수니 여버디 무여네스로스 라 무여네스 디 타마투나 안 산지 좀 된디기 최 잠비 고던로도 추무도스 산지 좀 된디기 최 잠비 고던 디 소디 무여네스 가라임바디 따투고야 무여네스 토니 무여네스 대단 tum비기 아니 가서다 내가 최고야지 조디레샤스로 텐상아주 감도 매번 만다버리 감도 매번 만다 여버디 소수로야 송바치체 로 디게 디 마숑바이나 로 따와니 렌 따와 멘티비 견생기 만치바 차바나 아니 자상지는 냠데야 가고베 차고도 디나신기 속바 있는다 아니 롬바 있는데 간지 따오면 또 견센도 제니 단심 끼야디 자원이니 더 추토는 시아바나 자원이니 지금도 더 노르디샤스로
We study the Dharma, we train in the Dharma, particularly we train in the Mahayana Dharma, and as such, our intention is to be of benefit for all sentient beings. So we speak about altruism, being of benefit to all sentient beings, and it sounds quite a massive intention, but what we need to make sure is that at least we treat those around us in a positive way, that we as much as possible care and be of benefit to those around us. And it's hard to do it when we're completely alone. It's hard to think that just me by myself, I'll be able to be of benefit to all sentient beings. So we come together, we assist each other in order to promote this common goal of being of maximum benefit to sentient beings. And when we do that, when we act together for the sake of others, as it happens from time to time, our ideas and ways of thinking differ. Since beginningless time and up to now, we've been so accustomed to certain ways of thinking that inevitably we will have different ideas and different views with respect to different things. In some sense, you can say that when two people meet, it is almost guaranteed that there would be different ways of thinking. But if we then become quite entrenched in the way that we think, we're not going to be able to be of maximum benefit to others if we're not going to be able to open our mind to the views of others. So when we look at also, when you look at how it is reflected in the teachings of the Buddha, in the teachings of the Buddha, the Bhagavan, we seek to develop a better understanding of reality, to make sure that our way of thinking is in line with reality. So we operate with each other and we might have different views and different ways of thinking, but rather than becoming confrontational or having some disagreement with others because they disagree with what we think, we need to make sure that whatever we think or whatever idea we have, it's actually based on our understanding of reality. And we want to take actions on the basis of understanding reality. So we are different to each other. We come from different dispositions. We have different inclinations, different backgrounds, and so forth. So we take that into consideration. We take that into consideration that we will have a varieties of views. And if we're incapable of doing that, there would be problems and difficulties. Even as far as when you look at your close personal relationship, if you're in a relationship with another person and you cannot be considerate of the views or ways of thinking of your partner, it's going to be difficult to hold on to this relationship. And the same thing applies to other relationships that we have in our society. So to get angry when others express ideas that are different to you is not the right way to go. It is a mistaken way of thinking.
데레다 nganzu begi number sangi begi che nangi da chik teba chimbi che songde digi da nimbudo di chanjuk samsing di chagdo sra da chanjuk sam kiyagi zawa di ani nganzu da simjan tamjelo la ya chik nyamba kardo tumba kardo o di gyunsen du chene ra nyamba gyunsen du chene ani samlo di tola ya poni di tola samlo tanchene chanjuk sem kigo dasra minton bada manyam bas gyunzen de chene ani torshik tayandi direm dasra tumba da nyamba de gyunzen de chene chu ruru cheyagi ani samlo di tone ani chanjuk sem kigo dasra.
So we practice the Buddha Dhamma, we practice the Mahayana Dhamma, and the essence of that is the practice of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. And the root of that is the recognition of the equality and sameness of sentient beings. So we think about the equality, the sameness of living beings, and on that basis, we develop bodhicitta. If we act to destroy, to eliminate the things that we consider to be not equal, not without any sense of sameness, it's not going to be a basis for developing bodhicitta. We need to recognize the equality and the sameness of all that lives.
Re bigi manyam sada ani mintusa ani samlu tangbayna ani cholong samba sing di gores ra kanji ani decha dang shedan da chagdol sobi kanji cholong samba di kiechini ani kaduna kanji sosu magi ba chayadi teldeni yungu yorwas ra tunsa da nyamsa di ton samlu tangbayna ani chamba da zewa sing di gores the Geshe Gadamba, Chug Nedun so Diganjig Drogdusra, or Dinza, Nanzun Tunsa, the Nyamsa, Nanzu Pig, or D ton some Dambaina, Tende and Randa Sheniga, ye, and Lo Debuyoyage, Pendo Tende Yores, Ra, Tireda, Sanji Sonia Tatubadi, Lamda Nayan Tatuba, Digan and Nangadus.
Whereas if we dwell on sentient beings being incompatible or unequal and so forth, which means that if we develop a partial attitude with respect to others, it would be a fertile ground for developing anger and attachment. Anger and attachment arise because of partiality, a biased attitude with respect to living beings, and that brings about unhappiness. Whereas if we generate the view or the vision, seeing others as equal, as compatible, we will use that as a basis for developing an equal sense of love and concern to them. So think of how sentient beings are compatible, how they're similar, how they're equal. That will bring about benefit. And this is the path that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, has shown to us.
Tel danganzu kabu gi tal lamram gi lamram toni man drogyonza ani tanjinganzu tangbun tende yati ani lamutsunga bagi ta sondep ani sovatapsa gi yuld lamutsunga ba lamutsunga ba surisana nganjun dün la yebi gi ani chabet din zabapo lamadi lamutsunga bares tenz danganzu chabet do suma londi gi and social law de yobada and din la yata chik pi tang mi la ya Geshe do chik minja and nge law de yob din do ji ma samba chi and lama chungka ba ma 안 손대기가 봐 딘치지기라야 샘 때토바야나 아니 갑도 라마중가 바기 칠람 주야기 케바요레스 어 딘디송도 딘자 땅아주 아니 람름 가두 시바네 양고델라야 라마중가 비기 라민엔주 땡고야기 미유디 안 텔테니 아니 가주 땡고요레스로.
Now here during the Friday morning sessions, we're looking at Lamrim text that explains the states of the path of enlightenment. And this text was composed by a Tibetan master called the Great Tsongkhapa. We began this session with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, in which we made supplications to Lama Tsongkhapa. So if you wonder, who is Lama Tsongkhapa? He's the author of the text that we're studying here during the Friday morning sessions. Now, with respect to our attitude in listening to those teachings, rather than thinking or listening to what Geshe reads from Lama Tsongkhapa's text, rather than thinking that we're studying that and Geshe is now reading this particular section of the text, think that Lama Tsongkhapa is teaching it to you in person. So if you think that you're receiving those teachings from Lama Tsongkhapa, you also receive the blessings of Lama Tsongkhapa. Not only study the text, but also receive the blessings of Lama Tsongkhapa. And that's the purpose for beginning our session with doing a recitation of Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga.
There, Lama Tsongkhapa 그 number D 제당 비기기다 안간주다 배비기 아니 자치 컨딩이지. 로 겐롱 넘버 간지 산지기 최근 날딩이지. 되니 오도수 전부 영이 빼고 데스 전부 여대요. 아니 년조도수 빼 전부 가리 미 가리시아바 있느냐 고통이지. 그러 아니 now 전부 여댕이지. 어 딘디지 요레스 로.
The paintings of Lama Tsongkhapa in depicting the physical aspect of Lama Tsongkhapa often is depicted in, first of all, being a monk, so wearing the monastic robes, but also normally is depicted with a big head, a wide forehead, big ears, big nose. So if you visualize Lama Tsongkhapa, this is how you visualize it.
tere dinja kong kari song ba ina da ani song pot chobgi ra ani tep dinjiki chobgi yores kashin dili tugo yorda o dinjiki chobgi de din da ji jing jebi kawa jiba na jing jeba ina ro onne tanigi chik bigilaya ani nganzu keji siaba na chik tebe shu mamu shu legdas dinji chiemeba 아니 아니 nenga yoyo 아니 공 지고 되니 배 nenga 두고설 통원디 배 dom gap 퉁인기 오늘 다니게다 아니 깨우삼기 메케바치 여바디 송 제토나 하고 그랬다.
Lama Tsongkhapa composed a great array of teachings that were compiled together into 18 volumes of teaching. So the book that Geshe was just holding is one of the volumes of teachings that Lama Tsongkhapa gave, and the other volumes within that set of 18 texts, some of them are much thicker than this book. So if we come across Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings and study them, we can see that what Lama Tsongkhapa taught was not superfluous, in a sense that it's not that he was speaking about a particular point with too many words. It's rather that every sentence or every verse, every line from his teachings is succinct, getting straight to the point, presenting all the key points in a well-organized summary.
어디래 딘자 베나타 간로나다 춘중 공니다 비길이야 라브드 총체 라마 기위신이 삼 김미케발이야 두야게 까와치 샤르반자 딘딜레 덴베타 라마 중가베 손라야 칸라 간정키 로브종도 체인자베 아니 소소다 경음이길래 아니 친디 라마 기위신이 겐진네 아니 라마 중가발이야 도드메비 대바도치 레이어스 딘딜레 덴베기다 송도서 싸치무 쇼치 소소인고는 지그야 반자 아니 가야 maybe 갑둘라야 아니 게 송포도 접기 찬상 그바인스 로 안 데디 갑둘라야 야가고 동장아 야가고 동장아 대사전아 롬바 디고 고무 야탐바 냄고요 말레스 이나가 두디 플랜 차스로 아니 미자니 야치 닝 루인스 오 디니친 당이 틴티 포도 접기 디 enge saja delaya kedius kan samaj tamadunaya ani ked dendri shujin sositachi ani pigi capture sak zuchin chatse sak zuchin ani chigiyus ro dingi chunzolaya di chikzachi morese ani 팔라바 tsamayi ba ngarang ngon thanigi ani pigi lunga yisum tesak zuchin digiyus ro
Geshe became a monk when he was young, and he was fortunate to be cared for by incredible lamas. He studied from many lamas, spiritual friends, and the teachings that he got were teachings that were drawing from Lama Tsongkhapa's writings, from those 18 volumes of teachings. And having been able to do that, Geshe reckons that it is attributed not only to the kindness of his teachers, his spiritual teachers, but also the karma that he himself has accumulated in past lifetimes that made it possible for him to seek ordination in this life and also to encounter the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. So at least Geshe said that for him, he has irreversible faith in Lama Tsongkhapa. When Geshe was in India during the early days, he made an effort to obtain the 18 volumes of teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. So he had to purchase them. And the price for that at the time was 5,000 rupees, which probably at this point in time, it's not even $100. But then Geshe has incurred a debt in a sense that he had to borrow money in order to get all the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa, those 18 volumes. And he also brought those books along with him when he came here to Australia, and he still uses those books as a main reference for prostrations, for showing respect and veneration. In terms of main point of reliance for body, speech, and mind, those 18 volumes of teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa are Geshe's main point of reliance.
Lama Tsongkhapa kupar dindi jewa ne chechong ra ngoni tane samla ya gawa tse meba chik kanji ani lama shibi gawa chik gyacha gyata ma ngi samla yes ro o dindi inza dindi chik yo ba ina dindi la tembi ge an chik song de kadu jewa ina ya kaptu be chik ani samla ya chik ani khaso da Lama Tsongkhapa bigi nyeshebi tokbi yonde dida ngale yomarda ina kanji song shaba di kaptu ngarang samla ji tsupe kaptu sun zungen sorochi kansa ken mambu chil teni yungu dosi tenza kyanan suna di nanshingi bigi la ya cheba chi Lama Tsongkhapa la ya teba gom lami nenju kyangba ina gyacha gyatamba ngale kyanan su namju che yugires kadzis namju yoba di tsugi and Keranzu Samlaya, Pendo Yomadi, Gaja Yadamas, that's say Yavshuslan, Yav tourist, the Niro Chadishas.
Even now, Geshe says, when he comes across just a small image of Lama Tsongkhapa, it brings about joy in his mind, immeasurable joy to his mind. So if we have something like that, when we come across the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa, it will benefit the mind. So Geshe said that he hasn't got the qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa, the same degree or same measure of qualities that Lama Tsongkhapa had, but still, when you think of faith and joy, when you think of the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa, and when you listen to those teachings, it is as if those teachings are entering into your heart. So we can check it out. Through that, we can develop faith in Lama Tsongkhapa, cherish the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa. And Geshe says that we are smarter than he is. And if we looking at our background, our education system, we are smarter than he is. So certainly we can derive benefits from developing such attitudes.
Oh, did it? 다 딘디지 가르치는 기교를 쓰라바이나 nganzo sangi gi chela ya zo di tembi da tembo chom den dires ta khong gi chuzu gi pa dom ro di jing wi ne zo lam dri wi ba debu ko drup su sej ta du gi druja ta ta ba tamji gi ko bo drup su di song nan di war ta di sum jing wi ne zo gi ani namsha an del tembi gi lam tabji ni bi jamba da za wa sherab la so ba ani ki zu gi ram ba da ngon ne thani gi 가주 쓰기 딱지 제바이나 균세 여바치 세부 쇼지마 domgyam song yobainza ta yewang chogo yoras ro manzu kyagzen shebaina cheba chiwondi gi ani cheba chiwondi gi ko zumba thondi ani lo matheyach yungdos ro kanji ga mawe wasurchi 가주스 그 뭐유 덴바 쉐바티 딱제 지는 통원디 아니 이 초고도 왔어. 어 딜리지어레스. 딜리지어레스 따라 남은 순간에 송디.
So if we wonder, why do we generate such attitudes? Well, when we look at the teachings that the Buddha, the lot of the teachings gave, he gave teachings pertaining to the basis, the two truths, the path or the paths of method and wisdom. It depends upon which we attain the two bodies of Buddha. And when we do that, we focus on the presentation of the basis, the paths and the results in order to attain the state of liberation or the state of Buddha, the state of omniscience. So in order to do that, we first of all develop an understanding of how things exist at the very basis, the two truths. Then we develop the paths of the paths such as loving kindness, compassion, wisdom that realizes reality. And we use many reasons, many forms of logic in order to cultivate those paths within our mind stream. And if you use many reasons, many arguments for developing loving kindness, a sense of affection and closeness to others, wisdom and so forth, you find those teachings appealing to your mind. So we do that through analyzing and investigating the teachings. And when you do analysis and investigation, if you find that a certain teachings does not accord with reality, certain teaching are falsities, of course, you will not be inclined to take on these teachings. But if you investigate the teachings and you find that they ring true, you find them appealing, and therefore you will be more inclined to put those teachings into practice. And such are the qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa when you encounter his teachings. So you see that such teachings are based on reasons, and therefore they give this kind of easy approach to taking up those teachings with finding them appealing.
Now, that nganzu ta kapdu gu sajero di jigden do rindu meneba chiwa temba sayadi. Sajid di chagdo ta di kapdu gu sajid di 아니 직대 대단한 직대 바로 들어고 본 통화나세 직대래야 된다 숨바니스 가장 참
So when we look at the section that we're covering at the moment in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, in his presentation of the steps of the path of enlightenment, we are now looking at the meditation on death and impermanence. And we're today going to begin with the section that comes under the heading of at the time of death, nothing except for the Dhamma will be of benefit. But all this meditation altogether comes under the heading of explanation of how to remember or how to be mindful of death, that one will not stay in this world for long. So let's look at page 51 in this presentation. By the way, I think that Wisdom Publication is about to publish a revised translation of this text, so we cannot distribute it, but once Wisdom Publication releases this book, then everyone can have a copy.
Terida that di 가르송고 도스라운디 먼저 참마기 데바 메교직 열어서 먼저 참마 데바 메교디 치아드레스 아니 친병인직다 비길래야다 위투 탑세니 나 그다 미시 몽비왕기 안 소소소 비기다 직 독자 치아직 용기 얼마도 신 아니 미순다지기 와이나야 아니 신 되고 말았어 돈로 심진지 바이나야 아니 친 되고 매바디 비길래야 직 소라 년가 용도 제와이나 저저거도 왔어 부지기 바이나야 저저거도 왔어 디카르스나 친 되고 매반자 디러왔어 이나야 친 만데 신도 아니 친로에 여바디 야 간주 통주를 열어서 간주 미상으로 단답하듯다 지 민로차네 로카주스 로여리 디릴야지 민디 만신이 단답을 대열생이 지에매바디 가르스나 아니 치고고연자 고기위 타만 치워디 직딩이 춘이 차원자 아니 공의 딘디지 차원자 델 두고 왔어 디단 튠비기 상로지 땅 마투바이나 아니 치위 니모델이야 강한 체치 베 남자 숙침보 용해치 디토라야 비 아니 치 신디 비기치 랑기 르롱주 아니 ཉ인인데세 민타지 도스 사마리야치 아니 차치니 비기 아니 우체 마투야 강아시 우체데 딘디 다 용거를 다 디마용야기 탑시티 아니 우여기 치고고여바디 샘나라야 네바 니투바이나 안갑 투디 헬러진 야 당한 로레리 삼섬친 헬러진 로지 용거리스 내가 디치 송고도스라
In developing the mindfulness of death, we recognize that death will occur, and we also recognize that we do not want to die. No one is in favor of death, not only ourselves as human beings, but when you also look at animals, even insects, you can see how when there's a certain danger for life, they flee. Animals, even insects, small ants, and so forth, if they feel that there is danger, imminent danger, they flee. So we do not want to die, but because of ignorance, we end up becoming fearful of death. So it is evident that death will occur to us, but when death comes to pass, we become full of fear. We're gripped with fear. So when you think of the process that leads to death, whatever is born will certainly die at the end. And when the day of our death comes, if we find ourselves full of terror, full of fear, we'll experience additional problems and difficulties. We find it that it's difficult for us to be separated from, first of all, from our body, but also our possessions, those who are dear to our heart. With a sense of attachment, we cannot think of being separated from all the things that are so dear to our heart. But if we develop certainty of death, when our day of death comes, we'll be able to die with a state of mind that is more at ease, more relaxed, when we come to see that death will certainly occur.
당한 로벌 기반자 자탕 길이야 저단 로벌 기르스라는 지 캄바 메죠 아니 지 딘디소르 기르스라는 지지디게 탑교르식 양 로바 뒤즈 찍려야 배는 아주 롱바 로지면 뒤즈 찍려야 배 아니 롱바 코람 메독 칸도 그랬어 아니 딘디 뒤즈소르 질이야 기어스 따라 메독 길에 기르스라는 랍청에도 까고려야 딘디 요레스 사자자마 조르부치에 메사 아니 딘디려야 기온데 다 메독 길에야 당 아주 진중고려야 제무즈서 메독 메독고 메독라 데모단 세무제 데레 마도 단단한 주비기 쇠셔기 부구 세무제 세디 주거진 통해요 말했어. 다 매도 길어도 세무제로 dim bundra만다. bundra만다. 부들 아니 칼러 드라마도 요즘 부딘디어. 부 망부 쇼지 피기를 양아주 라바 투선 더러지 람상 코페 아니 시선도도 시시. 리페 고유치 마연 데그리스. 다드서 가르스나 코 시약 되바 메반자. 로 부친진 지바네 시약 되바 메반자 콘즈 딘치기도 하서라.
Geshe was born into a family of nomads. So it's quite removed from the way that we grew up or that we lived. So being born into a background of nomads where people did not live in houses. So you had a family tent or encampment, but there were no houses. Geshe grew up in an environment that was really pure and pristine. There was a period in a year where all the meadows around were full of flowers, colorful flowers. And everything was so clean, no garbage, nothing, no dirt. Everything was completely jam-packed with flowers. And you go out to the meadow and just play all day long, pluck flowers and so forth. The flowers were different to what we have here in that, here you might go to a field where you have cultivated flowers or things that are grown deliberately, but there in Geshe's homeland, things were growing naturally, and the meadow was completely packed with colorful flowers and also colorful insects. So going out to the meadow and playing around, plucking flowers and so forth, some of those insects feigned death when they were approached. Right, behaving as if they're already dead in order to not be killed. Again, Geshe says that when you think about it like that, it's an indication that even they have some fear of death, protecting themselves from death, from danger. They feign death in order to avoid death.
간진 무슨 춘준 진바이냐 신되기요 말되냐 당한서 직된데 카트는 로고야디 콜레기도 주샤와시 자기연자 당한서 로고고여바디 치고고여바디 샘레야 네바지 니투바나 다 데비 링라 임바이냐 다 니마지를 로고를 답지 아니 만로 바르등이지 답기 사장지 임바이냐 참부친 기부친 대고 삼성기 상로단사치 메셴발이네야 다 소소 데비리네야 강연진 편도진 아니 저니모델 머강가기 미야부든 러시아 아니 페사샤 삼성 가와키고에 간지 아니 메델이야 가와키고에 소고 삼성기 삼로지 tanto바나 데비리네야 수투나야 아니 지 참부 차야지다 딘디치 텐데 연구여서레스라 연구여서레스.
So that in Geshe's mind indicates that even small insects do not want to die. But this is the nature of the world. Death will come to pass. So one day will happen to us. And this is what we think, one day it will happen to me. I will need to depart from this world. And since that will definitely come to pass, at least while I'm alive, I want to be well. I want to live well with the people around me, with my family members. And also with my interactions with others, I want to be as positive as I can in my interactions with others so that even after my death, people will think that I was a valuable person, that I was a good person. So when we think about it like that, when we're still alive, it helps to develop harmony with others.
빈빈지는다 초보초모였는다 아니 지금 사장이는다 카트위니 모델라 시위니 모델라 아니 베 아니 미추다야라 소바 달로범치야 다 비기 아니 지금 풍부샤사가 드들려야는 로친 따지 메도샤야라 소바 지요라스 다디 지나 야부로스 이나야 치타기로지 수수 데비릴이야 셈비릴이야 가츠스기 참부체토야 가주스 변은 파마긴 거를 가주스 잠견 체토야지 근데 카요 라요 변도 로 니마치가 카트고 그랬다 근데 카 마트비 데바디 린들이야 나 고급인 삼성기 삼로 디다니 아니 드바이나 아니 시비니 모델이야 따야 아니 변나가도 니 파워 통리 니 겐라 공부 조사리 이나야 마조 콘이야 소수 강용 지용 제바인자 공부 조인이 모델이야 나랑 투바디 제이 게인나 토 데부 총유 삼성을 지디 쇼지 록폼 고야 메교트라 가와 공예지 비길이야 다 공부 존이 이교에다 레데이네야 디술이야 샘레야 가와 공예지 연구도 왔어 다 디니 모델이야 교바기야지 어니 딱지 겐디 슈비리야 켄치 투마소 니야우지 체메 다 뺏어 삼바이나 대 치다로 왔어 간지 간지 미 삼로 당단디 디쳐 마다와 싱이 디토니 미 삼로 당단디 교와 당야기 탑 야슈지 디토니 송구도 쓰라
So then when we look at the many people that surround us, we have maybe our aging parents, our siblings, our friends, our partner, husband, wife, what have you. When death occurs, often we find ourselves in complete despair. When the people that are close to us die, we break into tears. We find ourselves with a great sense of despair. So you can say that, of course, in some sense that it's not a negative thing. It's good to be close to those people, but also sometimes our sense of despair comes about too late. And that while they're alive, it's good as much as we can to remind ourselves that one day they will no longer be there. One day they will die. And now we have an opportunity to make sure that our relationship with them works well. So we need to do it now, not to lose this opportunity. Whereas if we forget about it, at the end when they die, and we feel that we had an opportunity to make sure that we have good relationship, but we lost it, it's already too late. So at least Geshe said it on a personal level. His father passed away quite a few years ago. His teacher also passed away. But when they were alive, Geshe was trying as much as possible to relate to them with a great sense of affection. And of course, when someone like that dies, when they're close to your heart, you feel a sense of loss. But also, Geshe said that in his heart, he had also a sense of joy for having lived his life in a way that was close to those people and which as much as positivity as he could. Whereas if you don't think about it normally, that one day they will no longer be there, it is possible that while they die, you feel a sense of loss, but on top of that, there's a sense of regret that you haven't used those relationship or developed those relationship to the fullest. And then there's another sense of loss that you experience. So in order to prevent that from happening, the greatest sense of transformation is possible through the reflection on death and impermanence.
이 파울로 제주 담발라 총송스라 당아 투여말 파우 별로 총nga 야갈롱 되어라 파우 총가 라모델이야 니치단 파우 피길이야 지 애니 요보주 칼라테 지 둘로 딘디게 애니 파울레 샵시야데 키라요 말디니야 나타슬데 애니 지 페샤르데 피기타 지 기시 땅야긴 잠르레데요자 파우 코난 최지야라 가보 페연자 더페 로데부 차시 라 아니 ni gen la ya power mix ke churn this the ke yo mar de ne power khoran kombo ma zo ko ta peshi ni ma chi ni z para ma da maybe ka du la ya ani igo jinal pesha lu chi igo ni na pesha lu ani khada ji tin chi di jawar mo chi la phyu ro chi chi di ni gen la phyu ro chi gen ka den chi mo pe yin tangi phut di ta pe ani shu chi ya bu kyong shas ro kunju din cherda 어두진 다 간지 아니 녜기 나 타살 되네 빼셔 되네 대 디기 아니 파와 딜로 데부쇼 제진 드로여버디 무스 비길이야 디 총여레스로 디 제디기 다 아니 가와고메지 로 파와 총니 파와 투여 말에 수수 롱바드 카트란 로니 타스 조거 파와 투여 말에 파와 총 되네야 파와 총가 나면들라 지니 톨 사운다니 코란 가셴데 아니 물론 야고 얘기하는 총야디 어딘지 연구도 왔어 간지 아니 니마치라 카터고를 파이나리 마이나리 게게이나리 게투이나리 뿌긴 카터 카마 트레비 린라야지 semla ya gawa gongya chi ro soya di pe khishin burashas.
Geshe's dad passed away when he was 80 years old, and in the Tibetan ways of performing rites, when one of your family member dies, everyone comes together, and then lots of food is being made, and you kind of offer food to everyone, and you give different things to people around you. So Geshe was not there when his father passed away. For Geshe left Tibet as a refugee, went to India and settled in Etsara Monastery, and his father died in Tibet. But the time of Geshe's dad's death was around the examination or the completion of Geshe's Geshe studies at Etsara Monastery. So it coincided with that. Geshe's father was very devout. And when a couple of years before he passed away, he left a couple of envelopes of offerings. One of them was for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and another one was for Geshe's root teacher, in showing his appreciation of how they took good care of his son. So he passed away when Geshe was in India. Geshe was in India for 20 or 30 odd years when his father passed away. So there was a great distance in terms of place and time between them. And still, Geshe also felt a sense of joy when his father passed away. Of course, there was a sense of loss, but also a sense of joy, in, at least for his father to be able to accomplish what he thought, what he wanted. So his son was in the monastery. As Geshe said, his father was devout, so Geshe went around and make those offerings, and he also was able to make aspirations for the sake of his father with a happy mind or a light heart. So thinking about it in terms of our connections to our family members, if your parents, if your father and mother are still around, if sibling, partner, your teachers or what have you, it's really important to make sure that while they're alive, that we maintain relationships that are as positive as possible, so that when those people pass away, of course, there will be a sense of loss in our heart, but also a sense of joy for having been able to maintain good connection, good relationship with those who are close to our heart.
데리다 간지 간주 치워 되고요 말 치워 만두디 간주 치고레스 랍나 리직 땡데 아니 샘라 마가와 딘디 용시그레스 로라 마숑 치에드 자원인 되고면서 치워 걸 시원디 마가와 용시르데네 디 아니 로라 숑와치 로 소스 샘라 숑와치 고요 네츠지긴 반자 디 숑와치치니 아니 사운로 땅데 단데 디니마 니마 츠글로고 인스로 디나로 열다 nganzu debirin la ya chik pigi lonchu sag yore ane chik nyen de mambu shu chi yore tele ya shu chi chakshin yore ina ya chiwi nyimo tele ya tu sama shan rogo gres kesa che yo mares so chik bo chin rogo gres ro tinza ta chi debirin la ya so su metsele ya kale gyavni penjo sa jawadi chik ene chi goya tsawni ma temba na 사야 코랑 마도지 배주 제약이 제 말아와 차야게 년가 변도스 다 디차와나 12년들 같이 봐 샤는 줘야라면도 기산 제어 말 아니 깔에 겨겨부터 도종소르잖아 초문다 진짜 안 성리하고 스탄인 줘봐이나 간지 토니 소술이야 팬도여 버치 용구요레스.
So with that in mind, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session when we began the reflection upon death and impermanence, and keeping in mind that we do not wish to die. And although we do not wish to die, it will come to pass. So the point in thinking about it is not to create a great sense of dislike or malaise in our mind. It might cause a sense of discomfort or unhappiness when you think of your upcoming death. But the point is to think about it until we come to terms with our own approaching death. So that while we're still alive, when we look at the things that we do, like, for example, we amass resources and things that we enjoy, enjoyments. We have connections and relationship with those who are close to us, friends, relatives, and so forth. And when we die, we leave all those things behind and depart completely alone, proceed completely alone. So looking at the things that we work hard for in this life, we accumulate resources and money. If we only accumulate money but don't use it, we come to the time of death and we'll definitely have to be separated from all the things that we have worked so hard to accumulate in this life, and we'll continue to we continue on completely alone. So if you think about it while you're still alive in terms of how much effort you put into accumulating wealth and so forth, but at the end you will have to be separated from those things and continue on, you will find this point beneficial. So this is what Lama Tsongkhapa says here in the section that says, at the time of death, nothing except for the Dharma will be of benefit.
상상한 상월다 벤조야 다시 싸워나 소수 베조 마치바나야 소수 치디 부부 부줄이야 샤초그레 상상도 딘디 망복 상당 거라스 이나 벤조 디기 아니 자니 드로사비질이야 부부 부줄이야 펜빙 네바 싸워니는 문도스 망부 쇼지 벨이야 파마 총니 피기 다지 테마 마예고 나라야 지 파미기 테마 마예고 부부피기래야 축바셔지 팀간난 로지 파미 벤주 된달래 지금 망고 슬라 팀간난 레댕 빼마모도 왔어 간지 부부 축바셔야기 시소를 차로 빈빈게 축바셔야기 시소 벤냥가 빼도 왔어 델리 소수 예비리래야 배주 약부 제바이나 약슈티 로 삼슈 디차도 왔어
Sometimes you spend your life in accumulating possessions, accumulating wealth, and you're not using them, but you still think that I'll be able to leave them to my family members, to my children, to my grandchildren, and so forth. So many people think about it, but then still it is not absolutely guaranteed that that will be beneficial to them. In that there's so many cases, for example, so many people that fight over inheritance. So parents with good intentions might decide to leave money in order to help their kids, but then they start quarreling about money. I got this, I didn't get that, you took more than this and that. So in that sense, we think that even if I haven't used it for myself, it would be useful for others, but there is also no guarantee that that will actually be the case.
어디래서 단단히 이제 록샤고스라 손반니스 대다른 지대 파르든 로고본 통하나 신디 년남 시 세션 동원치위 탁고리야 직장 직선에 이동원 놀기 본부 진이 여장 드텐상에 캐드메디 렌지기비 샤르장 토르나 젠타지메 대나 신디 분조 탐지장 다 토르라 다기장 다다 토르니 지대신든 조와식 네퍼 오 대연들 오 냠도 상라 대리 오 냠도 상라 년다 르다 롱주 소기 개원도 무당와 최자와 탁주와 만도 자와 상로 야고 있다 최최스나 간지 뭐요 내주고 상로 땅 투야게 돌아야 탁제야디 베케션 버렸어.
Let's look at what Lama Tsongkhapa says with respect to the point, at the time of death, nothing will be of help apart from the Dharma. So the actual reasons begin with saying that you cannot take friends along. Thus, when you see that when you see that you have to go to another world, to next life, even if at that time you're surrounded by loving and very distressed friends or relatives, you cannot take even one of them along. You cannot take possessions along, in saying that whatever heaps of attractive riches you have obtained, you cannot take along even a tiny particle of them. And it also says that if you have to leave behind even the flesh and bones you were born with, what need to talk about anything else? So having thought about these points, then we need to come to a resolution with respect to what would be our attitude with respect to that. So looking at the decision to practice the Dhamma only, it says then you think at that time it will certainly come to pass that all excellences of this life leave me, just as I leave them, and I will proceed to another world. This will happen today. You should make the decision many times to practice the Dharma without submitting to conditions of the body, of friends, possessions, and so forth. So having thought about it, this is the resolution that you should come to.
Kekasi joya lamji shin bin bewko des tindri tal chiklo kiati kale khabuda yorda yin yan ta lamgi shi pege ta ngone thane gi devi gi shidi ro tendu devi gi shi chago yanza ani beba chego gres ro bewko des ta givisini chimo poto sone ngegi hansil matawa gomban di inde 년제 당 요시소 체딘 상황권 살니 랑직부 니스메바 세파르데 체긴로 신이 최먼바 지장 잘 매냠데 센들라 마차바식 동론 들로라 마기 파르드 최탐지기 람간에 두바 인송 도부위샤니장 샬라 초사바단 드바종 하달라말로 소원데시 르신 당제니 내딩기 삼나 로갸야 메게냐바 시갸 되주소나 메네비 지식달 기와인 송오스 텔로서 까마비 미보포 슈스는 가마 껴게 초니 슈자나 초이마도 시송 대단한 신년 땜바다 단조다 메다비 권은 송럽 공전의 집에 가는 두냐 갑 대대 티 냠는데 신 꺄나 갸비곰바 델라도 니번 교디 갑신디야 대들 시벌 자오스.
So looking at the next point, it says the need to try hard, since it is the foundation of the path. This is the foundation of the path that leads to happiness and well-being. Although this decision rises only with great difficulty, you should try hard, since it is the foundation of the path that leads to happiness. In the words of Potua, this very meditation on impermanence is my dispeller of appearances consisting. Dispelling all the appearances of this life, close relationships, possessions, and the like, and aware that I will go here and there to another life alone without anything, I think I must do nothing that is not Dharma. And non-attachment to this life first arises. Until this attitude arises in your mind, the paths to all the Dharma remain blocked. Also, Doba said, if incidentally you accumulate the collections and purify obscurations, make requests to the deities and your guru, and contemplate insistently with perseverance, even that which you think will not come about for 100 years will come about effortlessly. For compounded phenomena do not remain static. When someone asks Kamawa about moving on to another object, he said, repeat the previous one. When asked about the remaining ones, he said, there is nothing beyond it. Now, the final point in the reflection on the mindfulness of death and impermanence is how to carry out the practice of all the scriptures. And it says, thus, if you understand the way to practice reliance on a spiritual teacher, the freedoms and endowments, as well as impermanence, in that particular context of the scriptures and their commentaries. And if you then nurture that understanding, you will easily find the intention of the victor. In this way, you will also understand them in other contexts.
ko susu pami chugyu kain ba ditol yobana ani dan nambi puni shon shebi gi labsha di len yala keyo maros di kanji susu le kari pen togdune di suleni ani drobayna ko namju gi lega chirwasro inza dindi tolaya kadzug samlu tamba di chugi ani rangi loje cher drogoba namju cher drogoba ro 가죽 남주 첨부여와 뒤쪽이 자발랍신 제도도 왔으러 어디차고 그랬으러
The section that says how to carry out the practice of all the scriptures begin in saying that if you understand the way to practice reliance on a spiritual teacher, the freedoms and endowments, as well as sorry, I should go up there. It says reading from this section, if incidentally you accumulate the collections and purify obscurations, make requests to the deities and your guru, and contemplate incessantly with perseverance, even that which you think will not come for 100 years will come about effortlessly. So here it speaks about it from a Buddhist perspective. So from a Buddhist perspective, you might do all those different practices. You might make prayers, supplications to your gurus, to deities, and so forth. But just as well, you can think of this reflection on death and impermanence and apply it to whatever spiritual path you follow, keeping in mind that here, for example, in Australia, we're not necessarily, most people are not born into Buddhist, into the Buddhist tradition or to Buddhist parents. So you might be following another religion, another path. You can still use such reflections on death and impermanence in order to develop your own spiritual path in whatever religion you follow. You can use those points if you find them of benefit in order to develop your mind, to make your mind vast and spacious, so that whatever you practice, whatever might be your spiritual path, you'll make it more meaningful. You'll be able to train at your spiritual path in a way that is more profound.
셰럽기 남주 셰럽 가주스기 체여바 뒤쪽에다 로게 칠로야지 라 아니 부스토야 디뇽로야지 디여바나 란싱기 메델야 아니 시딜레 투고레스로 마도 아니 로게 총 잡아이나 통제 총 잡아이나 아니 샘 부스토 붙여야지 가주스 부스토 붙여와 뒤쪽이 마기와 용도 생각 먼저 샘래야 라 사양 통야 베 마음비 깨지레면도스 아니 지 비기긴 튕긴 위험하게 깨져 짬레면도스로 기마기세디 소샘래야 라래가 라 아니 샘 기부 용약이 시자 조디 로코양부 로갸첨부지 깨트고나 아니 샘디 파베부 르르 용야지 아니 부스 도부 샤와나 마기바 용야 디 갸다마 디레스로
At least from a Buddhist perspective, principal goal is to develop wisdom, to develop a way of thinking, to develop our wisdom so that we'd be able to make the mind vast and spacious, to make a mind broad and less narrow. And if a mind is made broad, vast and spacious, naturally it will be more at ease, more relaxed. Whereas if we keep a mind confined, if it is narrow, we'll be made uptight, and uptightness brings about unhappiness. So when we then use a wisdom in the practice of the Buddha Dharma, it's not about making sure that we have many favorable conditions, food, drinks, and so forth. It's mainly about developing our mind, making it broad. If we are able to make a mind broader, our mind will be less uptight. Our mind will be more at ease, more happy, and better.
Tere jinza number sanji bi che pi zu ding anzu dan denban denya dia jida ya bu pere inaya zu di dire mandas pena mane jaya changa saya so wa and dizo ani manam jaya ani cheba pi dizo jidan phusum so bi yang la re de ine zu di samlo tayanti ro zu di samlo tayanti rangi namje khombal tayanti number sanji bi che zu ro di chagdos.
So in a Buddhist practice, we might be doing some recitations, different recitations, mantras, such as Om Mani Padme Hum and so forth. And all those recitations are good. They're good to do. So reciting prayers, making offerings and so forth, it's good to do them. They're what we call branches of the excellent. But the main thing that we focus rather than on the branches is to develop our mind. That is the main purpose of the Buddhist tradition, rather than just focusing on making prayers and so forth. Our main goal is to develop our mind.
Number sanji chugi nyamlin chini ngone thani gi timre tending di temba shaja to khoncha gorasra ani khongi namtar nalola ya kerab nalola chiondi 아니 쪼디 비기다 지 초법이야다 아니 차세야다 가서다 아니 생각사야 딘디 실은 제문도 제마성스러 공기 조 술점 송야 짐바타야 소바곰야 종주종야 아니 삼된 곰야 셰럽 곰진 간지 진소 파신 쪽이 냠는디 아니 비기 라링 쪼체네 아니 뭐뭐 산지 샤버지 뒤tembe 남들 디레도스러.
At least when we look at what we practice based on the teachings of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and Shakyamuni Buddha is the one that, first of all, has put it into practice and then taught it to others. So as such, is the main person that we rely upon. When you look at the Jakarta tales, the tales that tell the life stories of the Buddha, then you don't find references to the Buddha making offerings, prostrations, recitations of different mantras. The main thing that those teachers that those stories tell are about the way that the Buddha practiced generosity, ethical discipline, joyous perseverance, patience, absorption, wisdom, the practice of the 6 perfections. Those are the main things that we practice.
And so the Tereshasra, Tanganzo teaches Julius Lavanza, then be Jesus June, that is not Julius Lavanza, and did so renders man, Kapkalang and Zuchi Pigeta, Dembodayan Danchi, and Tangasaya, Chopapiadi, and Hordabadache, two Semgi Tony, Yamlin Chiadi, and Pe Karsagorda, contending Sadro Shashadi, and Anzolaya Trimdi Tangumandazra. 디레셔스 간지 아니 수름 송고야 소보곰고야 종주점고야 아니 비게 어디서 소래도스라 디수 용약 체도 아니 비게 다지 쳐버비야 차세야 아니 생각사야 아니 라라말 소야다야디야 니지 아니 수름이 야고 송투야 체도 아니 라라말 소야다 짐바 야고 땅투야 체도 라라말 소야다 쳐버비 어두 세바나 아니
And in our practice, we follow these practices of Buddha, the Buddha Shakyamuni. So sometimes we do a lot of recitation, we make extensive offerings, we recite many mantras, and we try to do as much as we can in those areas, but still our mind is all over the place. So if we do it in this way, while allowing our mind to be all over the place, well, we're not really putting into practice the main intention of the Buddha. So sometimes we, so in our practice, we mainly want to practice generosity and ethics and joyous effort and patience and wisdom and absorption, concentration, and so forth. And to create favorable conditions for such practices, sometimes we make prayers. So for example, we make prayers and supplications to deities and so forth. We do that in order to create those favorable conditions for the main practice.
어딘지 레셔스라다 간지 아니 남바산기비 추기님부디 제소파신 주기 냠렌티 추기님부디 제소파신 주기 냠렌티 레셔스 인정한도 디 미위레샤니 디 드비샬라샤니 데니 살라말레요 소데 베낭한도 다지 람름 시온디 다 동아 강기이네야 아니 라마싱인디 쇼직베 개체무진 송요레스 간스나 아니 라말 데니 카를랭고레스 라운디 람도르그니 땡인디 라마차건자 람도르그니 장고건자 아니 라말 데니 장고건자 라마디 개체무 쓰기도 하스로 디레마도 젬바 람도르그니 마장와 아니 라미자니 렌샤야지 가야 요소마레스 로 가야 요소마레스디.
So our main practice is the practice of the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, absorption, and wisdom. This is our objective, to practice those 6 perfections. And for that reason, sometimes we make supplications to the Lama. Like, for example, when you look at the presentation of the Lamrim, the steps of the path to enlightenment, we make such applications to the Lama. We regard the Lama, the Guru, to be important because that person is teaching us the key points of what we need to do, what we need to take up, and what we need to cast aside. And therefore, we regard that person as very important. They teach us what we need to do. So if you have a certain person from which you do not study any of those points, what you need to do, what you need to take up, what you need to cast aside, how is that person becoming important to you?
And someday sherabta shemogo varavas. And chu nyenging winina and surum soya, sobogomia, songdritianti. Pigi sobe lega chingi jimbaina, surum soya, sobogomia, songdritianti. Kanji di kawalina ra sen delayina pejuyoba, se chimalina pejuyoba, rangjian kanayana, one tanic pendo yubi, nobody, and jeso passion tuki.
So when you teach the Dhamma, you need to do that depending upon ethical discipline, and it depends upon patience and on concentration. But also when you listen to teachings, you need to do it in relation to ethical discipline, patience, and concentration. When you do community work, when you work together in a group, you also need this. You need ethical discipline, you need patience, you need joyous effort, you need absorption or concentration, which means that in whatever you do, wherever you are, and whatever you do in this life, future life, for yourself, for the sake of others, all of these are requirements. They are necessary. In short, we still need to practice the 6 perfections.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Shannon sent a question. It says, when it comes to the relationship with parents, if your parents are aging and not able to support themselves financially or physically, is it more valuable to support them in those ways or to spend more time engaging in Dhamma study, which may not accumulate wealth to support them? Tadila soso pama gengo chawa inarwa gengo chane soso la roba chego yona peja pyugogi yona roba shemba chi chego yona tadi kare jene yasare soso nyamlen lobjon ta nyamlen hotabata chene kadu konsola penjola pentoshida mebache amena roba de kadu mebache ine peshe pula peshe pento chayo sare yamena pesha konsola pesha che du legala dogo gure pesha sana yagarbe kharchene yasares
Tangara muziki dan gawa mebaji leji magene digmaras. Tangara muziki danda. Ngegi mzenala ya jik pama penju chedo pamala ya penju chedo ngegi da lo chupshi chonga kaptwala ya nga des ani pi ani paminyamdo dene lo ni som dinjile ya da nganzu longbe pi da jingdang toni ani kalidis kyawrochi robotis chema deni jin nga thasala yoni ngegi jik pamala ya pi pinji chedo lega cheo mares peng chet ro ani ina jing pami ani pi dedun zu di ngatasal de tawaya buche ani pechat deni tarshimba chona koran zu dedun tartuba di tichag yobanza di tolang ngi kanjun ro cheyoris ro
ne kesi mikena yamena hama de. At least Geshe said that when he looks at his life, he sees no contradiction with that, in that he lived with his family in a family encampment as he grew up in a nomadic setup. He had to participate in some of the tasks or jobs that you have in the family encampment. So now while he, let's say, since he was born into that place, and he lived there till he was 14, 15 years old. And for 2 or 3 years, he had to go out with the animals or do other works around the family, the family camp. So of course you have to do it. But then having become a monk and then having left Tibet, settled in South India, joined Sera Monastery, and continued his studies for a few decades, study and practice. That was his parents' final goal or final wish. So Geshe feels that actually, rather than thinking that he needs to do something physically in order to support his parents, he feels that that was actually what his parents wanted him to do.
소수기 카요라요기 펜도 가르치 두고도 가족 것도 그 파말이야 오늘 가르고도 디톨이야 배전치에도 백해천시레사스 로 당한러나 아마 카다르 무슈지다 메질라다 투야기 레오메교스로지 한 데데디 다 탑식지 가려서나 니 아마냠도 깨지셔야지 니마 따가 쇼킹이 당시디 비기 깨져디 아말라 딴 토야기 탑시 디치기스 니마 따바 아말이야지 아니 참드시야도 아니 깨지셔야지 디 아무거나 배가오시기도스 로 다 디슨저닝 아주 간지 파마 겐골이야 소수 응원이 가서 톡바디 가르 톡바디 제약이 뒤즈레스 따라 간지 뒤즈디레스.
But anyway, when we look at our current situation, Geshe feels that when our parents are getting old and some things might become more difficult to them, it's important to do whatever we can in order to support them. And even if we cannot do much, then at least talk to them. Geshe's mom lives in Tibet, so it's far away from Australia. Obviously, Geshe hasn't seen her for many years, but he tries to at least talk to her every day. And this is really important. This is something that at least Geshe feels something that makes the parents feel happy. Geshe, at least every morning, he tries at least to send through a message or to talk to his mom. And also that's something that is really important to her. It also makes her happy. So in whatever way we can support our parents, at least in so far as maintaining a connection, that's important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we'll finish with a final Lamrim prayer. I remember to do it just before the session. So let's see if I have the right copy. Just a second. I Googled it just before the session. This is what we have? Yeah, I think that this is probably the same. All right, let's do it in English. So I'll share the screen with the people at home. For my two collections, vast space that I amassed from working with effort in this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all life's manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going up with great compassion, in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time. May even this graded path enlightenment completed due to the wondrous victorious conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who eliminate adversities and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddha. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may always be assisted with the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.